What is up, my friends? Chandler Molyneux here, and welcome into the Act First show, where we make sales simple for online coaches. And in this video, I'm going to give you guys a 5 to 10 minute pre-sales call routine that if you do this, you're going to show up on your sales calls in a peak energetic state. And when we're in a peak energetic state, because what sales is, or what I believe sales is it's a transfer of belief, right? Whoever believes in their state more than the other person is going to win that interaction. Let me give you an example. You have a mom, you have a daughter. They walk into a candy store. The daughter wants a lollipop. The mom doesn't want the daughter to have the lollipop. Whoever believes energetically in their position more is going to win that interaction. So if sales is a transfer of energy, a transfer of belief, the person who believes in their stance more wins, then why don't we have routines that get us in a peak energetic state? So this will be a quick one, but this is going to be an extremely powerful one, because if you guys actually introduce this, if you guys actually execute this into your day-to-day routine, I promise you it's going to be a game changer. All right, let's get into it. So how did this all get started? So I listened to a podcast, and the podcast was with LeBron James's trainer. And the trainer was talking about LeBron's morning routine and how LeBron's morning routine stimulates him physically and mentally. So when he wakes up, he foam rolls, right? So he's getting his body ready for the physicality that's going to take on in that day. And as he's foam rolling, he'll visualize each part of his day. He'll visualize his workout and the reps and executing the reps to the 10th degree. He'll visualize shooting practice. If he has a game that day, he'll visualize the game, right? So he's going through each aspect of his day in a peak state and executing it the way that it needs to get done in his mind first while he's warming up his body. Now, where this left me after I listened to this podcast is that people who excel, people who are professionals, people who are great at their craft have routines that get them into peak energy state. They don't just get into peak. They don't just snap their fingers and say, hey, I'm in a peak energy state now. I'm in a peak energy state now. I control my emotions. No, they have routines. They have things that they do. They have preparation that gets them into that state. So if that's true, why, there's no difference in how you and I execute, right? As a closer, we should have a routine that gets us into a peak energy state so that we can perform best on the call. Now, at the foundational level, every single closer or every single coach or anybody who is taking sales calls should have a personal development routine, and that should be your foundation. But if we want to take it to the next level, we should also have a pre-sales call routine. Now, what is a pre-sales call routine? Okay, a pre-sales call routine should be 5 to 10 minutes long, so no longer than 10 minutes, 10 minutes max. And you can do this once before all your calls that day. So let's say you have back-to-back calls, you do this one time before all your calls that day. Or you could do it as many times as you need, right? Let's say you have a call, it doesn't go the way that you want. You want to snap out of that negative energy state, get back into a positive energy state, right? You do the pre-sales call routine before your next call, right? There is no limit. You could do it as much as you want, but bare minimum 5 to 10 minutes before your first sales call for that day. Okay, now, if you're like, Chad, this is baloney. This is I just need to practice my sales reps. I just need to practice my objection handling. I just need to watch my call review. If you're thinking about this logically, Harvard says otherwise. Okay, so I was doing some research into this because I too am pretty logically brained and think, oh yeah, I'm just going to get better at repetition with objection handling practice, get better at my discovery, watch my sales calls back. But Harvard Business Review, okay, so I wrote this one down. Harvard Business Review, Harvard Pinnacle, says that 70 to 80% of sales success is mindset. Right? 70 to 80% is mindset. That means that only 20 to 30% is actually practicing the reps, is actually knowing what to say and how to say it, right? Knowing the script, knowing the frameworks to handle these different objections, right? But only 20 to 30% is that. That's crazy. 70 to 80% is mindset, right? So overall, if we want to be a professional, if we want to dominate on the sales call, we need to get into a peak energetic state. Okay, Let's talk about it. So what exactly is this routine, this 5 to 10 minute routine? All right, so there's an acronym here, PRPM, per PIM, okay? I came up with this, so this isn't something that I found. This is legitimately the routine that I use, per PIM, okay? So P stands for preparation, R stands for review, the other P stands for physical, and the M stands for mental. Okay, let's break this down, all right? Highly recommend you have pen and paper so that you guys can write this down. All right, let's start with preparation. If you've ever felt anxious before a sales call, one of the things you could do to eliminate that anxiety is to prepare for the sales call. All right, so there are very specific things that I'll do prior to the sales call to prep so I am set up for success on that sales call. All right, the first thing I do is I'm a pen to paper kind of guy, as you can tell. So pen to paper, I'm writing down each section of the discovery. All right. So, why? All right. Then I write down goal. Then I write down challenge, tried, 12 months if you do, 12 months if you don't, need, right? These are all the sections of the actual sales call. All right. I'm only writing down one word though. So I write down the why, I write down goal, I write down challenge, right? And when I look down at my piece of paper, I know, okay, I know the sequence of the script now, right? So I don't have to think about the sequence of the script. When I see that trigger word, I know exactly what question I need to ask. All right, it also allows me to write down notes, right? So on the sales call, I can actually write down notes. So when I get to the end of the sales call, if I find anything that will give me leverage, if they give me an objection, boom, I could look down on my piece of paper. Maybe I circled it and I can use it really quickly, okay? So I'll prepare a piece of paper in that way, all right? Other things that I'm preparing my payment processor. So I'm assuming that this person's closing. I'm assuming if they show, they're closing. So I want to have my payment processor up and ready. There's nothing worse than closing the deal and they say yes, and then you have to pull up your payment processor. You have to log in. There's this awkward, quiet lull phase where, heck, maybe if you prolong that process, they're like, it gives them time to think, right? They're like, actually, and then they back out. No, we don't want that. Prepare your payment processor, have it as a tab up on your screen already. All right. You also want to do the same thing with your contract, okay? So if you use DocuSign, if you use Go High Level, you want to have that as a tab open on your computer as well with the contract ready to go. So when they say yes, bada bing, bada boom, you can take care of it quickly and swiftly. All right, the last thing that you want to have prepared is your presentation, okay? I'm assuming that on Canva, you have some form of a presentation that you take them through in order to showcase your product. All right, so the preparing a piece of paper, okay? And that piece of paper is for you to take notes on, and then also put the keywords of the discovery there so you know exactly where you're at in the script. All right, you're preparing your payment processor, so when they close, it's quick, it's swift, it's efficient, it's professional. Same thing with your contract process. And then lastly, your presentation as well. All right, so that's P. All right, R stands for review. Now, this is optional. Okay, and let me go through it and then I'll explain why it's optional. All right, so what would you review? If you have a CRM and you exchange notes with people on your team and somebody is the one who prospect this lead, they're probably going to leave notes on the lead, right? You want to review those notes, okay? Now, maybe you want to review the conversation. Maybe they take screenshots of the conversation. You can review the conversation so you can see, the conversation that was had prior with this lead. All right. Or maybe you're the one who booked the call and you want to go back and re-review the conversation. Okay. So the other thing that you could review is their social media profile, right? To get a kind of a gist of who you're about to talk to here. Now, this is why it's optional. If that process creates preconceived notions about the lead, you should not do it. Right? Because we always want to assume that if a lead got through our prospecting process, that they are a closable lead. Okay. So if you are reviewing the notes, reviewing the social media, and you're like, I don't think this is going to be a good lead, then they show up and they end up being a good lead. Well, subconsciously, you've already defined them and labeled them as a bad lead. So maybe you don't push as hard in the objection handling, right? So if you feel like that would be you, remove this from the pre-sales call routine. Okay. If actually reviewing this information makes you feel more confident, makes you feel more prepared, then you should absolutely have this in your pre-sales call routine. All right, the third thing we want to do is we want to have something physical. Why? Because when we do something physical, it releases the feel-good endorphins in our brain. All right, we got serotonin, we got oxytocin, we got dopamine. All of these chemical cocktails, when they release in the brain, we feel good. We get in that peak energy state, right? We're energized. We have oxygen in the blood. So when we show up on the call, we're in our best energetic state. Nobody buys. So if you show up on a call and you're like, hey, and you just have very low energy, nobody buys from people with low energy. But if you have high energy, you're confident, right? Not over the top, but you have high energy, you're confident. People can tell you're being genuine and authentic. You're positive, right? You have a higher likelihood of closing that person. Okay, so we have to do something physical. Now, most ideal, you're working out in the morning, right, prior to your sales calls anyways. But in the pre-sales call routine, we could do something quick just to get some more oxygen and blood flow. Now, you don't need to show up on the sales call huffing and puffing and sweating. That would be weird too. This shouldn't be like a full-blown workout prior to the sales call. Remember, the pre-sales call routine is 5 to 10 minutes long. What we're looking for here is maybe you do some jumping jacks, maybe you do some air squats, maybe you do some push-ups, right? Just something to get the blood flow moving here. All right. Then we got mental. All right, so this is the last thing in your pre-sales call routine, okay? And mental is visualizing the close. So you're actually going to close your eyes and you're going to visualize taking the lead through the discovery, right? You're taking their concerns, you're eliminating those concerns before they become objections. You're fully understanding their problems so you could present the solution. You're visualizing a perfect discovery. Then you visualize taking them through the presentation. You could see on their face, they're excited, they're ecstatic. This is exactly what they're looking for. You take them through the pitch. You can objection handle you can visualize no objections, you close the deal, or you can visualize them giving you an objection, but you lead them through that objection. You conquer that objection and you close the deal, right? We want to 30 to 60 seconds. It doesn't have to be long. Close your eyes and visualize the process. Visualize you going through the reps before you actually do it. All right, let's recap this. 5 to 10 minutes long. Preparation, prepare that piece of paper, your payment processor, your contract, and your presentation. Review, optional. Review the client notes and their social media profile. Physical, some sort of movement, 20 to 30 jumping jacks, right? Just something, 30 to 60 seconds of movement, maybe 60 to 120 seconds of movement, something to get the blood flow going. And then lastly, 30 to 60 seconds of mental visualization of you closing this lead. The last thing I forgot actually for mental visualization, not only do we want to visualize the sales call, we also want to visualize them using your program, using the program and getting great results and accomplishing their goal. All right, y'all. That's the 5 to 10 minute pre-sales call routine. All right. I'm going to leave you with this though. Okay. Because you might be like, Chad, this is too much work. I'm just going to show up to the sales call and I'll be in peak energetic state. I want you to read this quote. Champions don't rise to the occasion. They fall to the level of their preparation. All right. So people who are not champions, the opposite of a champion is a loser. Okay. So people who do not win in life say, I will just show up and rise to the occasion. Says it right here. Champions don't rise to the occasion. All right. Champions fall to the level of their preparation. So they view it almost as a floor, right? So if I prepare, I'm raising the floor for my success. Meaning if I bottom out, if I fail, I'll fall to that level of preparation. If I had no preparation, I'm absolutely going to bomb this sales call. But if I had high levels of preparation, there is a high chance that even if I don't show up on my 110% best, I still am going to close this call. All right, so do not be that person. Be a champion. Champions don't rise to the occasion. Champions fall to the level of their preparation. And I want you to be a champion. All right, y'all. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you did, make sure you subscribe, give a thumbs up, leave a little comment, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.